Hi, I'm Bob Hiss, and welcome to another episode of Milton Republican TV, which we like to call MRTV. A brief introduction, I'm the chairman of the Milton Republican Town Committee here in town, and we broadcast this show twice a week in order to try to educate the voters of Milton into issues that are going to be of interest to them, which could be how things at the national, state, or local level are all going to affect them as citizens and voters. And we're lucky today to have a guest coming in from out of town, Representative Shaunna O'Connell, who is here to join us today. So thank you very much for coming by.
Hey, glad to be here. Thank you for having me, Bob.
It's our pleasure. So what might be helpful, and I'm sure not everyone is familiar with you, so could you provide a little background to us on you and what you do and how you got into politics, et cetera?
Sure. So yes, I'm Shaunna O'Connell, and I'm from the city of Taunton. And I first ran for office in 2010. And Bob, I had never run for office before. It was my first time. And I squeaked in with 31 votes.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite a tough race. I beat a very long time incumbent, but people seemed ready for a change, and so it's been a great experience so far, representing the 3rd Bristol District, which is most of the city of Taunton, and one precinct in Easton as well.
Got it. So you would serve with Walter Timothy, for example, who's one of the representatives from Milton
yes.
in the State House. Okay.
Yes, I do. And your senator, Brian Joyce, is also represents part of Easton, which I represent part of.
Got it. So there's some overlaps and something in common we have with your district and Milton. Very good. So you would have been elected in 2010 and re-elected in 12. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
And luckily in 12 I was re-elected by a much larger margin. So a term of really hard work seemed to have paid off. People
Very good.
seemed pleased.
You had some breathing room. What did you do before you got into politics, and what got you interested?
So I was a freelance court reporter for about 15 years, but what actually got me interested in politics is probably what keeps most people from getting into politics, and that was my children. Becoming a mother, having 2 young daughters. In 2008, we started trying to get Jessica's Law passed here in Massachusetts, and that is mandatory sentencing for sex offenders.
Right.
And so I got involved with that. I just kind of felt this calling as a mom that I needed to help get this law passed. And I got involved with that, which brought me into closer to politics and kind of seeing how the system worked. My representative at the time did not support mandatory sentencing at all, and so I ended up, running against him in 2010 and winning the seat, and here I am.
And it's all downhill from there. Well, terrific. So, well, the reason we wanted to invite you in was I heard you speak at the Norfolk County Republican Club about 6 months ago. And you were speaking about the EBT program and some fraud and abuse that you've recently become aware of. And we thought that that might be something of interest to people. They might not hear about it on a regular basis. But we might start back at the beginning.
Yeah.
What is the EBT card and the EBT program?
Sure. And actually it's been about 2.5 years that I've been working on the issue with a lot of my colleagues as well. And so an EBT card is looks like a credit card, and people will get public assistance money on that. So it could be food stamps, and it could be cash assistance. And it's one card, so it could have 2 accounts on it. So a lot of people only have food stamps, but a lot of people have cash as well. We have about, 75,000 households that have cash, which translates into about 150,000 people. On the other hand, we have 450,000 households that get food stamps, which is SNAP. And that translates into about 800,000 people. So it's a much larger program, the food stamp program, than the cash program.
Got it. So close to, is there overlap between the 800 and the 150, or is it?
Yes. If you're getting cash assistance, chances are you're getting food stamps as well.
Got it.
Some people only get food stamps. That's why there's such a larger number of people getting food stamps. And it's much, the requirements are less. To the threshold to get in and get food stamps are lower than to get cash assistance.
Got it. Okay. So there's probably 6 million people in the state of Massachusetts, about 800,000 on the program. So something like 13% of our citizens or so are on the program in one degree or another.
It's a large number. I think they say 1 out of 7 or 8 people. Yeah.
Right. What's the source of the funds for the EBT and the cash?
So a lot of it, well, it's all taxpayer dollars.
Okay.
Some of it's federal. The food stamp SNAP program is federally funded, and the cash assistance program is state funds and federal funds. It's a mix of both.
A mix of both.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So,
and let me just tell you
please.
that they're funded at about, the cash is about $415 million a year, and the food stamp program, it's probably approaching about 1.4, 1.5 billion a year, and that's just in Massachusetts.
Right. So is that $20,000 going through food stamps for those 800,000 people, I guess, if I did my quick math? And you said how much in cash goes through?
It's about $415 million.
Wow.
And for the households.
For 150,000 people.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right. So sizable amounts of money we're talking about.
Oh,
in
yes,
both
absolutely,
cases.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, who is eligible for these, and how do they determine their eligibility and become part of the program?
Yeah, so for cash, it's different for cash and for food stamps. So for cash, there are a variety of criteria to become eligible for it, but some people that would be eligible would be a pregnant mom, a mom with children. It could be a family that's struggling for whatever reason and needs some help with cash assistance. And the cash assistance runs from a very low amount per month. You could get only $100 up to over $700 a month. So it runs the gamut. Food stamps are, it's a lot lower threshold for food stamps, and there's no asset test, and which I find a little bit troublesome, and it's mostly done online, so that one's a little bit harder to control, I think, when it comes to fraud and abuse in the programs.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, it's been an issue that I've really been passionate about, and wanting to make sure that there is no fraud, or that there's as little as possible in the program, because I do see these as important programs. There are people that need our help.
Right.
And no one out there wants to say, you have to go without our help. We want to help people who need it. At the same time, we want to ensure that people aren't gaming the system and getting in there that shouldn't be in there. I grew up with my family, with my mom and my brother and sister in low-income housing. So, I've been there. I know what it's like to need help. I know what it's like to get help. And I feel very fortunate to be where I am today, to really have had the support of my family and be in this position where I can help oversee these programs and make sure that the right people are getting the assistance that they need.
Right, right. So when the money is loaded up on the EBT card, where can the people use the cards, and what can they buy with them?
Well, so
that's the intent, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
that's been a little bit of a concern as well for people, and for me as well, because on the cash program we have no control over how people spend the money. And so I've been working on this for a couple of years now, and one of the things we found out was, we give somebody, say, $500 a month and say, we hope you use it the right way. And
Really?
it's kind of the honor system, and that can be a problem, especially when you want to help people become self-sufficient and help them make the best decisions possible, and yet you give them this money and say, go be responsible with it. So we did end up passing some laws to say, you can't buy certain things. The first one that I worked on that we passed back in 2011 was you cannot buy alcohol, tobacco, or lottery tickets with your cash assistance.
Okay.
And a lot of people said, Bob, what do you mean that's not a law already? And it was not. So we did pass
Well,
that.
it was the honor system to start, and then you had to watch and see how that
Yes,
honor worked out.
So we've gone further and passed some more laws last year that you can't use your cards at certain stores, like liquor stores, tattoo parlors, jewelry stores, things like that,
Right.
vacation services, and you can't purchase those things either. So we have gone a little bit farther, but it still is the honor system, because there's really no way, unless, to know what people are purchasing, because the problem is they can go to the ATM and take out all their money in cash.
Oh, I see.
And then just go buy whatever you want. And so that was something that I was really trying to work on and say, set up a system where They do everything online. The bulk of their money goes to pay rents, generally speaking. Well, why don't we set up a system where people pay their rent online? That way we know they're paying their rent, and it gives them that banking kind of experience, that online payment kind of experience, more responsibility. I think it would be a help for people. That's been a struggle to get passed in the legislature.
So it sounds like this is accepted by merchants just like a debit card would be, a restored value card.
Right.
Then, right?
Right, yes, and you can go, you can buy something, you can get money back. You can go to the ATM, buy something. The food stamp portion, this is where I think people get confused. The food stamp portion you can only use for food products, supposedly. And so people will say, well, I saw somebody buying something that wasn't food. Well, maybe they have cash on their card too. Unfortunately, the food stamp card, the SNAP card, is a bit of the honor system as well, because if you go to a small mom and pop store, you can buy anything you want because they just ring it up under miscellaneous items, and there's no controls over there. There's only controls in the larger stores like the Walmarts and the Targets and things like that.
I see. So if I were to walk into a larger store, is that the computer systems then going to prevent the user from buying prohibited items and allow the permitted items?
On the SNAP card.
On the SNAP card itself, okay.
Only on the SNAP card, not on the cash part of the card.
So are there two different cards that
It
look
is the same
differently?
card.
It's the same card,
yes,
okay.
and so, but we've struggled to find a way in Massachusetts to do the same thing as the federal government does. And it's the stores that input it into their computers. And you probably have heard the story about we found all these high balances on EBT cards.
Maybe you could describe what you found and
Sure.
how pervasive was it?
Yeah, so we received a receipt from a merchant, and when you use your EBT card, apparently a receipt gets printed out, and it tells you your balance. But the merchant keeps this receipt. It's for the merchant. And there was a balance on someone's SNAP card of $7,000.
Really?
And we thought, gee, why would someone have a balance of $7,000? This is really money for necessities, to bridge the gap, to help people out. So to accumulate that kind of a balance, there seems like there's something going on there. So I asked from the Department of Transitional Assistance, I said, please give me a list of all the balances for these cards so we can see what's going on. How many more cards are there like this? And they really were very reluctant to give me the information for about 6 months. And then finally they did, and they said, well, if you pay us $800, we'll give you the information. So
Okay.
I said, okay, I'll pay you $800, and we got the information. We found, I thought, some shocking balances.
By the way, was this a state agency you were requesting this of?
Yes,
Really? Okay, as a
yes.
state rep, you had to pay $800 to get state information.
Right, right.
Interesting.
And I think the disappointing part was when that agency heard about this problem, they should have really been the first ones to say, wow, we better check this out. As commissioner of that agency, I want to myself see what the problem is. But we didn't get that. So I ended up paying it and getting the information. And the highest balance was $12,000.
Wow.
And they ran the whole gamut. It was $10,000, $8,000, all the way down. And so what ended up happening was they did end up doing reforms and saying, okay, when a balance gets to a certain amount, we're going to contact the folks with the card. However, it didn't go quite far enough. We just passed legislation recently. They're still going to let people accumulate balances for 9 months before they contact them. And so that's on the cash and the SNAP card. The cash cards had balances of $5,000. Now, these are for necessities, these cards, for people who need some help, bridging the gap, making ends meet. And to accumulate $5,000 on a card, it makes you wonder if that person really needs this assistance. Yeah. And so to let them now, their big reform was let them accumulate it for 9 months. That's too long. And the other problem is, or the other concern, is that well, maybe somebody's having a hard time using their card. Maybe they can't get out of their house. Maybe they're elderly. Maybe there's a language barrier and they need help. But we're going to let them sit for 9 months without contacting them to see what is wrong. So I would like to see that tightened up a little bit more. 9 months is just too long.
So it sounds like what's happening is we're depositing money into these accounts, into these cards, regardless of how much is there.
Yes.
So the balance just accumulates
Right.
month after month after month.
And it didn't used to be that way because actually a lot of people, over the past couple of years, a lot of people that work in these agencies call me. And I always hold their names and their information in confidence because I'm always surprised that they're willing to call me, which means they're very frustrated. They want to call me and tell me what's going on.
These are employees, state employees calling you?
Yes,
okay.
To tell me, look, this is wrong in this department, this is going on, this is a scam, and they tell me what goes on. And so I have them calling me and giving me this kind of information about what the problems are in the department.
So you're not alone in this. There's even people who are administering the programs that are just seeing problems.
Well,
with it.
These are the caseworkers who see it firsthand, and the other really big problem that we've had in this program is they use a lot of what they call self-declarations.
Who uses self-declarations?
Well, so the department lets people that are applying for assistance use these self-declarations. And what that is basically a piece of paper that you fill out when you don't have documentation for something like your address or the rent you pay. And you can sign a piece of paper self-declaring that you live here, you pay this much rent, and you sign it under the pains and penalties of perjury. Well, for someone who wants to game the system or get money they don't deserve, they're really not going to care about those couple of words, signed under the pains and penalties of perjury. So it doesn't, a lot of the reforms that we've done are a good step in the right direction, but they just don't go far enough to really stop the fraud in its tracks and stop it before it starts. And that's what we should be doing. Because again, we really want to make sure there's only a certain amount of money to go around for everyone.
Right.
We want to make sure that the people who need it are getting it.
What has the growth in these programs been like, but even since 2010 when you've been in the State House?
Well, they continue to go up every single year. And the food stamp program has grown exponentially.
That's been well documented
2008.
Right.
And that is a federal program, but it has grown. And that was somewhat justifiable with the recession that happened in 2008. People needed help.
Right.
But we've somewhat recovered from that. Some people have gotten back to work. The unemployment rate isn't as low as we'd like it to be, but it's a little bit lower. But yet the rolls keep going higher and higher. So those two things don't seem to jibe.
Yeah. Now, is this cash balance issue present with SNAP on the food stamp side as well as the cash side, or is it just on the cash side that the balances can grow and accumulate?
It's on both.
Really?
Yes. And I was saying that we used to several years ago, when someone would accumulate a balance over 90 days, we would cut their balance back down and take that money out.
Or at least stop the deposits, right?
Right. And that does not happen anymore. In the SNAP program, we also used to do asset checks. We don't do that anymore. There used to be a work requirement. We don't do that anymore. So the requirements have gotten lower and lower. And I will also tell you that it's not just, an EBT issue. This is in all of our public assistance programs, our mass health, which is much, much larger than these two programs. We have, and I'm not just saying this, we have reports from the Inspector General, from the Auditor on EBT, on mass health, that document very clearly the fraud that's happening in these programs and the suggestions on how to fix it, which aren't always followed.
Right.
The other thing is that I've been pushing for the past, over a year now, is to do identity verification or authentication, because for food stamps, everything's done online or through the mail, basically. And it's very easy to get a social security number and ID and send that in. So there are systems out there, and Florida uses one in particular. There's these national databases that you can use to identify that somebody belongs to that social security number. So we might get somebody's social security number and do a check on it.
And it's a valid one.
Right, exactly. It's a valid number, but does it belong to them? We don't take that extra step. Does it belong to them? And that's a problem. And there are tools out there that we could do that, but again, I've been pushing this legislation and it has been rejected a few times now.
It's like that famous New Yorker cartoon where the dog is sitting there on the internet and says, on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. Well, apparently, we don't know if your social security number is valid. So you raised a couple interesting points. So you said the requirements have changed recently Are they federally mandated changes in the verification we do, or stopping balances from growing, or are they under state control?
So for the SNAP program, some of them are federal suggestions and some of them are mandates. So they allowed people to stop, they allowed states rather, to stop doing the asset checks. And you didn't have to stop doing them, but Massachusetts voluntarily stopped doing them. And
was that a conscious decision that was,
yes.
that didn't just expire somehow, someone forgot about it? They decided to lower the bar, so
That's
to speak.
right, that's right. And in the Mass Health program too. And you know, that's why you'll hear people say, well, I know somebody on Mass Health and they own $1 million home. Well, that's because there's no asset test from Mass Health. You just have to prove that you have low income.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, how big a problem is this amongst that $400 million in cash and $1.2 billion, I think you said, in food stamps? How is the Inspector General of the State Auditor quantified the degree that this fraud and abuse?
Well, the Inspector
rise to?
General's report, you know, he found a minimum, he said, a minimum of $25 million in fraud. And so I think 9% of people from his report had eligibility problems and possibly did not belong on the system. That's a very, very large number.
Wow.
And the auditor's report had some very disturbing facts as well. And one of them, you know, the one that really hit me the most was in these reports that came out this year that the Department of Transitional Assistance has tools available to catch fraud, so that they, you know, maybe somebody uses their whole balance at once on their food stamp card, or they're doing multiple transactions within one day, and they have, or they're spending money out of state. That was another problem, people spending money out of state. $2.3 million in Florida. That's a problem. That is a problem.
Yeah, that's not a transitional assistance problem we're having.
Right, and they were not even using the tools that were available to them to catch the fraud. And so that is something that we want to see happening. They do seem to be making some changes to move toward that. But again, it's a self-policing department, and what I have fought for is to take the fraud unit out of the Department of Transitional Assistance, because they shouldn't be policing themselves. Somebody else should be doing that. And I am still going to be fighting for that. We should be having regular audits of this department, and they should not be policing themselves. And that's what's happening right now.
Has the state auditor weighed in on this yet?
Well, she did come out with an audit about the program recently. The program then said, look, we're making these changes. We're going to try and fix this problem. Well, that's good. We want to see that happen, but we need to do another audit because they've been implementing these changes from May, and I think that we need to start an audit right now to find out if any of these things that they say they're doing are working.
Right. So the source of the problem could be 9% of the people may not be eligible in the first point. That's like 70,000 out of those 800,000 folks. And the second is, for those who are in the program, eligible or not, they're running up balances, they're indicating they're not spending on what we need, and they may be spending it on things that are outside the intent of the program. As you said, lottery tickets or
Right.
alcohol.
And you know, I will say that, you know, the vast majority of people who are in the program need it and use it correctly.
Right.
But you know what, if we've got 3%, 5%, 7% of people that do not belong in the program, that is what we need to be taking a look at. And if we do the asset, another thing, everything's the honor system. To receive cash, they do some asset verification, but they don't know you have assets unless you tell them, because they can't check. Well, they could check if they passed my legislation that would set up these databases and allow them to check. But we don't know if someone has a bank account unless they tell us. We don't know if they own a home somewhere, maybe in Massachusetts or in another state, or boats or multiple cars in other states, because all they do right now is check the RMV in Massachusetts, when we could be checking nationwide RMV and nationwide assets. So that is something that we could catch a lot of fraud with. and not just in the EBT program, but particularly in the mass health program as well. We need to also pay attention to that. There's a lot of focus on EBT, but we need to focus on mass health as well, and also the unemployment, our unemployment program.
Right.
You know, we know that people cheat that system too. So, you know, we want to be fair to the taxpayers and fair to the people that need the help from us the most.
Okay. So the Inspector General has weighed in, and there's been one audit, but is the governor or other representatives and state senators joining you in this effort, or are you the lone wolf crying out?
You know, there certainly are some. Of course, all of my Republican colleagues back the reforms, and there are some Democrats that vote with us. There's a few, there's not many, but there's a few that will vote with us on these the common sense reforms, like no out-of-state spending, except for border states.
Okay.
I understand that people may need to shop in Rhode Island because they live near Rhode Island or whatever. But you know what? $2.3 million in Florida, I see that as a problem. That's somebody out of state longer than they should be, and they should not be spending the taxpayer dollars in Florida, where they, which is a vacation destination.
Okay.
So there are some that vote with us, you know, on this, but there's very few. And you know, we just had a really long debate about this at the State House, and some additional reforms that were rejected. One was the out-of-state spending that was rejected. Another problem we have is people that come to Massachusetts with green cards. And so when you come here with a green card, that is perfectly legal. You've done it the right way. We're glad you've done it the right way, but you have a sponsor.
Yeah, right.
And your sponsor agrees to be financially responsible for you for 5 years and signs an affidavit, a legal affidavit under the law saying, I pledge to be financially responsible. And so they are bound by that. And what Massachusetts is doing is letting people get cash assistance when they've been here less than 5 years.
So we could go on and on this. I think we're out of time.
Oh, we are, yes.
Show today, but I wish we could have you for another half hour.
So we have made some gains. We have made some moves forward. One thing that I was particularly glad we did is now people have to present their Social Security number at the time of application.
Good.
That's something that I've been fighting for 2 years now, and we finally got that done. So that was a good step forward.
Terrific. Okay. Well, again, I'm Bob Hiss from Milton Republican Town Committee on MRTV. Representative O'Connell, thanks very much for coming and sharing us your thoughts. We enjoyed it, and hope you'll come back someday and see us.
Absolutely, love to.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.